You down, baby. Man, we have officially crowned a national champion. And no, it was not Miami. Thank goodness it is the Indiana Hoosiers. They survived the convicts in their own building, and it was a nail biter. I mean, I'm pretty sure I don't even have nail beds anymore. But thankfully, they got it done. And what a way to cap off an incredible season. I am so happy for the Hoosiers. Yes, I'm sad that it couldn't be my Dogs, and I hate to see the Big Ten win it again, but it's hard not to be happy for this Indiana team, for Curt Cignetti, and for, yes, the dork himself, Fernando Mendoza. Bro was a literal 2-star recruit out of high school, wanted to play for his favorite team, who happened to be Miami, but was denied a walk-on spot, and then ended up beating that team that denied him in the national championship game in their building after playing several other teams that passed on him on his route to get there. And now he has the Heisman Trophy and a national championship trophy to his name, and he's in all likelihood the number 1 first draft pick in the NFL. There really is not a much better story than his in college football, but it's a similar story to pretty much all the guys on Indiana's roster. Nobody believed in them at the start of the season. We were all looking for the next Indiana, and basically as if Indiana had no chance of success this year with that harder schedule, but instead they cap off a perfect fairy tale undefeated season with a shiny national championship trophy, and they did it with 0 5-stars on their roster. Just a bunch of misfits playing with a chip on their shoulder after being disregarded and discarded by bigger programs. And I said this before, but they had the least talented roster in the playoffs on paper behind only James Madison. That's correct. Even Tulane had a more talented roster on paper, but thankfully for the Hoosiers, they get to play these games on the field and not on paper. And they were electric in every single game they played, routing both Alabama and Oregon to make it to the national championship game. And it would be one thing if they made it to the national championship game and fell short, but no, they finished the job and they got their fairy tale ending in an incredible game. Who said defensive games couldn't be fun? Because this game had me biting my nail beds, like I said. I was clinched up, I was sweating, and I was on the edge of my seat, which honestly I wasn't even in my seat. I was pacing the whole game. So sure, it made me want to pull all my hair out because the officiating was some of the worst I've ever seen in a game, and I wouldn't think fondly of this game had it gone the other way. But what more can you ask for from a national championship game than for it to come down to the very last play like this one did? And I do want to circle back to officiating because that may have been, like I said, the worst officiating I've seen in a game in a long time since pretty much last year's Miami games when they were just on a crazy run of these awful officiating outcome, basically affecting their games and giving them wins they probably shouldn't have had. It's kind of odd that the worst officiated games I've seen in my life have all involved Miami and have gone in their favor, but I digress. You may think I am biased and looking for it harder, which is definitely true. I am a known Miami hater, but don't take it from me. Take it from the announcers who were constantly calling it out and talking about it all game long. There were those 3 missed personal fouls against Mendoza in the first quarter alone. Then the missed defensive holds all night, as well as egregious offensive holding on some of Miami's most successful drives and most successful plays of the night. It's no secret that Miami plays dirty. That's kind of what they're known for. But they get away with it and get to do whatever they want, honestly, especially in this game. They had targeting, late hits, you name it. Miami did it all in this game and got off scot-free most of the time. But it's a beautiful thing when cheaters lose because Indiana endured all of that BS and still won anyways, no thanks to those guys in black and white. Although they did make sure to call a roughing the passer call at the end of the game when Miami was a play away from losing the game. But whatever. Do I think the refs were paid or wanted Miami to win? Probably not. But I do get suspicious that they are encouraged to make these games closer for TV ratings, just my personal conspiracy. And if that is true, they succeeded in making this game a lot closer than it should have been. But Indiana did what championship teams do, and they won anyways. Not to take away from everything Miami did, because as overrated as I feel like they are all season, they showed up big time in this game. Their defensive line was clearly the best in the country, and they tore up Indiana's O-line. On offense, their line did a great job of giving Beck clean pockets, and Malachi Tony and Mark Fletcher are just straight up aliens from another planet. They played their best football in the postseason here, and I think they probably deserve more credit than I initially gave them. It was just hard for me to look past those 2 losses to mediocre teams, along with their mediocre quarterback play and not so great head coach, in my opinion. And to an extent, I think that my doubting of that pairing did come to fruition. I've told y'all all season that I do not trust Carson Beck, and that's part of the reason I kept picking against the Canes in the playoffs. And with the Natty on the line, he threw a very characteristic interception to end the game. And I can't lie, it was a perfect way for the national championship game to end in my eyes as a Georgia fan who hates Carson Beck, and also as a guy who grew up a Florida State fan who just hates Miami in general. And as for Carson Beck's performance in the rest of the game, I mean, he was fine. He had a few clutch plays, but most of the game, it was just the running backs who were making these big plays. And on the coaching side, I think it took Miami a while to really adjust and get things going. They were very impatient with their play calling in that first half, abandoning the run way too fast, and on defense allowing Mendoza to take some pretty easy passes in the middle of the field. So I think my take about Miami was pretty vindicated as for why I knew they wouldn't win a national title. But honestly, they still played a great game. It just wasn't enough to take down a team like Indiana that does not make those same kind of mistakes. You have to earn every single yard and every single point you get against them because they just do not give up very much. They allowed a few busted explosive plays, but Miami really just lacked the balance that Indiana had, and they just couldn't sustain drives the same way Indiana was able to. The Hoosiers really played a very balanced game, and they won in all three phases of the game. On defense, their secondary was mostly lights out, especially their star, D'Angelo Pons, and of course the Jamari Sharp with the game-winning interception. And while they did let up a few big runs, they held up pretty well against the run most of the night. They were much better at wrapping up and finishing tackles than we saw out of Ole Miss last week, and they were also able to pressure and disrupt Beck, even if they weren't able to get to him very often. And on special teams, they, of course, got the blocked punt touchdown, which was huge. And then there was that missed field goal from Miami. And then on offense, like I said, extremely balanced, much better at sustaining drives because of it. Unlike Miami, Indiana did not give up on the run with Hemby, even though he got stuffed at or behind the line a lot of times. Him and Kalen Black were just able to really be efficient enough to break through major and get major gains, or just enough to make that first down manageable. The receivers also made some really clutch plays. Becker had two incredible, had to have them clutch catches to sustain drives, and Surratt and Cooper, they got theirs too. Honestly, Indiana spread the ball really well, and that kept Miami on their toes. But at the end of the day, this game was in the hands of one Fernando Mendoza. He had a really difficult task ahead of him with a monster pass rush coming after him all night, and yet he just still delivered without a single turnover, whether that meant running the ball on 4th and 5 and going airborne to extend for a touchdown against the best team in the country at stopping QB runs, or whether it was making incredible drive-saving throws. Mendoza really did it all, and he laid it all out on the line and took some pretty nasty and dirty hits along the way. He truly played like a champion and like a Heisman. And Curt Cignetti, man, I told y'all before the game that I would much rather have Cignetti on the sideline in a game like this than Cristobal. And this game showed us exactly why. He is the best coach in college football right now, even above my GOAT, Kirby Smart. What he has done for Indiana is incredible and almost impossible. I've never seen it done before, even by greats like Nick Saban. To take a program like Indiana, who only had 3 wins before he got there, and then 2 years later be hoisting up a national championship trophy, should be impossible. But Cignetti did it anyways, and he did it without really showing any emotion. He's just a certified killer, dude. And like I said, some of the decisions that he made in that game were psychotic, like the decision to go for it on 4th and 5 back-to-back times when you are up 3 points. But he believed in his team, and they delivered for him. The balls Curt Cignetti must have, they must be made of straight steel. And all those decisions paid off with a win. Any of those decisions going the other way, and we may be ending up with a different national champion. I was a bit nervous with that decision at the end of the game to kick a field goal on 4th and 4 instead of going for it and ending the game right there. I thought this was going to cost them, but especially considering Miami had a very successful offensive past few drives, I thought for sure that with the time they had left that Miami would be able to put together some big drive, and they almost did. And that was even more frustrating because they wouldn't have even had to be in that situation if Indiana hadn't had a false start on a 2nd and 1 play. That 1-yard pickup would have pretty much ended the game and made the game have a lot less drama. But with the 5-yard penalty, they were unable to make that first down and forced them to kick a field goal and go up by 6 instead of 10. And I was so sure that Miami was going to take advantage of that with a massive mistake and win the game at the very end without giving Indiana a chance with the ball. But I'm just glad that I can depend on Carson Beck to throw at least 1 interception in every single game. Luckily, he decided to do it in this game at the very end, so I appreciate him for that at least. And like I said, that could not have been a better way for the national championship game to end for me. Miami loses, and it was Carson Beck's fault. Just doesn't get better than that. So that's going to do it for the season, guys. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to stop making content on this channel. In fact, I'm really excited about the stuff I have lined up while I patiently await the next season. So you will want to stay tuned for that for sure. But thank you for everyone who has stayed tuned this season and listened to me yap. I love doing this, and it means a lot that anyone would take time out of their day to listen to a guy like me talk about the sport that I love. So if you like this content, please show me some love by hitting like, dropping a comment, and consider subscribing, even hitting the notification button, the bell, to get notified when I drop a new video. So I'll see y'all next time. Peace.